Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. This month marks the 70th anniversary of singer Pat Boone's prolific recording career, which began in April of 1953. He joined me to discuss his journey from a 50s teen idol with hits like Love Letters in the Sand all the way to the Gospel Music Hall of Fame.
At this stage in my life and career, I've got 16 grandkids and 17 great-grandkids. The grandkids know who I am. The great-grandkids don't have an idea. They're too young.
They will one day.
I'm trying to build a library of all this kind of stuff that they can visit with me when the old man is long gone.
Totally. That's great. I love the foresight of that, to leave a little time capsule behind. I love it.
You know, I don't know too much about my great-grandfather. I really don't.
Did I read that you might be related to Daniel Boone?
Definitely direct descended from Daniel Boone, yeah.
Oh, you did the old genealogy test or whatever?
Yes, I have the actual chart that shows that I am a direct descendant of Daniel Boone, yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. So how many greats is that? Great, like 5 greats, 6 greats?
It's great. Oh, back to him, it's 5.
That is so cool.
He was born in 1734, and I was born in 1934. So that's 200 years apart. But it goes back like 6 generations, 6 or 7.
That's so cool.
Here I am at 88. He lived to be 94, and I'm planning on doing at least that well, maybe longer.
Oh, you could outlast him. I think you can pull it off. Awesome. Well, we should tell everyone the reason we're talking. Well, there's a couple of things. It's the first, we should say, it's, you're talking history, but I believe this is the 70th anniversary of your recording career. I think it began in April 1953. So yeah, if I do the math, that's 70 years. Can you believe it's been that long?
Well, you know what? That was, come to think, I've been calling it 70 years. And if you do it that way, yes, but I did make a record in Nashville on a label called Republic when I was about 18. And not much, it got some regional airplay, but it was not terrific. Then I won the Ted Mack Amateur Hour eventually in New York, which is the forerunner of, all the Voice, the Voice and the American Idol, all those shows. And then that led me to a record contract. So it was March of 55 when I first began having million-selling records.
Right. But we can, for the sake of this nice, neat, tidy 70th anniversary hook here for this interview, we can say that original Republic record was April 1953.
And I will be 89 in June of this year.
Right. So, wow.
Well,
since you mentioned it, what was it like becoming? I mean, I know I think I read somewhere you originally maybe were thinking about becoming a teacher before the whole teen idol thing of being on Ted Mack Amateur Hour. So like, what was that? It must have been a whirlwind to, suddenly be someone maybe going to go into a teaching career, and suddenly everybody knew you were from like you were the American Idol of your day.
That's the best description I've heard of it, a whirlwind. I was on my way. I married at 19, Shirley and I. Her dad, Red Foley, the great country Hall of Fame singer, was taking his he was a widower. Her mom had died when she was 37. And when Shirley, my wife, was 16. So at 19, when we were 19, he was taking his family to Springfield, Red Foley, that is. And I couldn't stand to let her go, and she didn't want to go. And so I asked his permission, and we married at 19. Now I go to North Texas State in Denton, Texas, with big music school. But while I'm there, I won a talent contest, went to New York, was on the Ted Mack Amateur Hour, won 3 weeks in a row. And that led to a record contract. And before I knew it, my first record was March of 55. And it was a cover of an R&B classic song called Two Hearts, Two Kisses by the Charms.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a million seller. And then the next was Ain't That a Shame, Fats Domino, another million seller, #1. And then it just kept going after that. And I transferred to Columbia University, and where I did graduate in 1958. And at that point, had to make a decision between looking for a teaching career somewhere or I had contracts for movies, television, and recording, and I had to see where those went first. But I didn't really expect it all to continue, but it did. It just kept going and going.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you mentioned those early R&B hits, you know, and you went to number one with Ain't That a Shame by Fats Domino originally. And then I guess like Little Richard, you covered Tutti Frutti and Long Tall Sally. You had hits with those. Why do you think R&B was such a great launching point for you? I mean, I guess at the time, what they called them, quote unquote, race records. And a lot of
Yes.
white artists like Elvis and yourself and others were having big success with it. I mean, I know we're in a different place today where we look back on all of that kind of stuff, but you know, at the time, sort of drop us in at the time of sort of the mindset of all that.
I will. In fact, you nailed it pretty well. There weren't a lot of people doing rhythm and blues music at all, and as you say, it was called race music. Black stations, their own magazines, and of course, they own artists. The only R&B artists that are remembered today are the ones who were covered. That is, their songs recovered and went into, pop music. That drew actual R&B music, which became a fertile field for pop things, and we were calling it rock and roll. There was no rock and roll till 1955, and we were borrowing that phrase from their records. We're going to rock and roll all night long, honey. Well, that could include dancing, but probably not. That was not all inclusive.
Right.
It was going to party all night long. Then rock around the clock, Bill Haley, from the movie Blackboard Jungle, and then the producers, the A&R people, were finding these catchy, hooky songs in rhythm and blues and having some of their artists record them, and they called it cover records. Well, I came along on just the cusp of that, and my first record was Two Hearts, Two Kisses, and I no sooner had recorded it, and we thought we had a hit with it, then the next day we found that Frank Sinatra had recorded that song. Doris Day had recorded that song. Two groups, the DeCastro sisters and Lancers, a men's group, all have had recovered that song. But the nation's number one DJ at that time in Cleveland, Bill Randall, he was the professor, they called him, and all the other DJs took his cues. So when he said, out of all the records on the cover records of Two Hearts, Two Kisses, Pat Boone's is the only one that captures the feeling of the song. It's his record.
More than Sinatra and Doris Day. Take that.
Yeah. And I've heard Sinatra's record. You could tell he wasn't enjoying it. He hated rock and roll, but the producer said, "Hey, you got to do this." Doris Day, I've never heard hers, and I'm glad, because there's no way she was going to capture the fun and the excitement of one heart's not enough, baby. Two hearts will make you feel crazy. One kiss will make you feel so nice. Two kisses take you to paradise. Two hearts, two kisses make one love. And
hey, thank you for singing that, because when you sing it, we can use it. We don't have to worry about copyright.
Well, then it was Ain't That a Shame, and I was off and running. And neither Frank nor Doris even tried to record those songs. And Elvis came right after me about 6 months later and was my opening act. And he covered an R&B song called "That's All Right, Mama." Anyway you please. and he followed me. So I had the first R&B cover, and that's when we started calling it rock and roll. And I've said a number of times, I think he and I were midwives at the birth of what we call rock and roll, because up till then it was just pop and R&B, separate genres, and we helped fuse the two.
That's great. And great work on you and Elvis's part. Obviously, legends. The two of you were sort of, I guess, number one and number two on the charts for like the 50s and maybe even to the early 60s. But at the same time, I'm glad that the Fats Dominoes and Little Richards and Chuck Berry's and the other black musicians at the time finally got their flowers as well. So I'm glad that they all became household names.
See, that's what we don't get credit for. We helped them come over, crossover as we call it, from pure R&B into pop, rock and roll, and my versions of those songs sold more by 10 times, like Fats Domino's "Ain't That a Shame." His was 150,000, and it was number one R&B. I did his song; it was number one multi-million seller. And he said he made more money. He literally did from my records of his song because he was the songwriter publisher.
So
He
the
got
royalties went to him every time it was covered.
from my records.
Mm.
So I sold 1.5 million like that, where he had sold 150,000, and he was thrilled. And Little Richard, same thing with, with the ones you mentioned, wop bop a loo mop a lop bop bop, and Rip It Up and The Long Tall Sally. I did those songs and a lot of the others, and they were, as I say, their music was good for me and I was good for their careers. Would they use those songs to cross over? And I even had them on my TV shows.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to get into those TV shows in a second, but first I want to double back to something you said about Elvis. Was your opening act one time in like 1956? Well, that must be a hard act to follow.
Well, no. See, it was not, because I'd only been recording since March of that year, and this was October of 55, that same year. But between March of 55 and October of 56, I had 3 million selling singles. And that's when I met Elvis. He came backstage at a sock hop in Cleveland, and they asked him to come up. He had just been signed to RCA Victor, but he hadn't recorded anything for them. He only had a Bill Monroe bluegrass song, Blue Moon of Kentucky, keep on shining.
Shine on the one that's gone and left me blue.
Yeah.
My grandpa always sang that song. I love that song.
And he tried to make it sound like rhythm and blues, but there's no way. And the kids didn't care for the music, but they liked the way he looked. So when he finished that, he said he wanted to do the B-side. He said, thank you very much. I'd like to do the other side of that record for you. Hope you like it. And that's all right, mama. That's all right with me, any way you please. And I was listening to him backstage, and I realized that RCA probably was going to do very well with this kid. But we didn't meet after he left, after his A and B sides. That was it, and he was gone. And he didn't get the screams that night. I did, only because I had 3 million sellers in the 9 months previous. And so when we met later again, we were both renting homes in Bel Air, making movies at 20th Century Fox at the same time in adjacent studios. So we spent a lot of time together, two Tennessee boys, me from Nashville and him from Tennessee, from Memphis. So I said, Elvis, that first time we met in Cleveland, you seemed so scared or nervous. He said, well, I didn't know how to talk to you, man. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, you were a star. I said, a star? I'd just been recording since March of that year. Yeah, but you had hit records, and I didn't know how to talk to you. And that's the way he was. He was socially shy. On stage, look out, he was great. But socially, he was not comfortable in situations where he didn't know the people. When I shook hands with him, I held out my hand to shake hands, and he let me shake his hand, but he didn't squeeze back. And nobody had really taught him that's how a man shakes hands. And then when I got to know Priscilla very well, she said that living with Elvis in Palm Springs with all of his buddies always there, she felt like she was living in a boy's dorm. She'd get up in the morning and walk in, and there's his friends, his buddies playing pool, and Elvis is up then before he started taking all the sleeping pills. And it was not a life conducive to a strong marriage, so it really didn't work. But he would visit me in the afternoons during that early period. I'd be in the swimming pool with my 4 little girls, and the girls would get out of the pool and run up and jump up on him. And I'd say, stop that, girls, you're getting him all wet. He said, leave him alone, man, I like it. And he did. He was wanting what I obviously had, a wife and a family, kids. But right then, Priscilla was stashed at still too young and back at Graceland. And he was a huge, iconic star, but he couldn't have the quiet and lovely home life that I already had. And that, so we stayed friends, and we shared back and forth, 2 Tennessee boys. And I was with Priscilla and Lisa Marie this last year in August at the 45th anniversary of his death. And they asked me to come in and talk about my friendship and relationship with him over the years. and I did, and I could see that Lisa Marie was not feeling well. I didn't know that she was only going to live another month.
Right.
Um, but so Priscilla is still, she's the last now of that little bit of a family, and I feel really sorry for her, but she's strong, and I know she'll make it. She'll keep going. But boy, the tragedies they've had.
Oh, the tragic life, and like you're saying, it's got caught up in sort of the sex, drugs, and rock and roll, flashier, more dangerous, darker sides of the whole thing. Whereas for you, thankfully, you and your late wife Shirley, what, married for 65 years, weren't you?
Yeah, we're married for 67 now. We're still
7?
married. She's been in heaven a couple of those years, but
Oh,
but
I
she
love how you put that. Yeah, so you still count the years. That's true.
she's
Why
still my
not?
wife.
Yeah.
We still have our anniversary, and she's saving a place for me. And there's never going to be another Mrs. Pat Boone, I can guarantee you. We had the ballast in our lives, and I made the remark in a couple of columns and interviews that people don't think about it, but sometimes sudden rushing success can do more harm than prolonged poverty.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, you can be struggling for a long, long time and still have moments of that you enjoy and can appreciate. Where if your whole life is one hectic, huge success, it can set you up. Jimi Hendrix and so many others we can name, Kurt Cobain and
Janis Joplin. There you can go on and on. Yeah.
and it's all that sudden rush, and you can have anything you want with no boundaries,
Yeah.
and it can be worse for you
Yeah.
than struggling and never quite making it, or having a little success and it fading.
Right.
But Elvis, he had it all the way, more than he wanted, and it took his life, really.
Yeah, I mean, from Elvis to Amy Winehouse and newer, we've seen this story time and again, that sudden rush of fame. Well, either way, I'd like to sort of double back to the way you sort of handled it, because I want to get to some of your hits that you had back then, back when Elvis was sort of scared to shake your hand because he was starstruck of you.
He got over that.
That's hilarious. Yeah, oh, I'm sure. A lot of your fans that are listening to this will remember I Always Lost My Mind and Don't Forbid Me and April Love and Moody River. There's so many, but tell me about Love Letters in the Sand, recording that one. That's like one of your most beloved, I think, that a lot of our listeners will love to this day. But why do you think that one connected so well with audiences?
Well, first of all, it came out in the summertime. All the teenagers had their little boom boxes. They were pretty new, and you could take them to the beach with you. And even if you didn't have a beach, you took them wherever you were, and it was summertime, and it really was a summertime song, writing love letters in the sand.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in my first movie, Bernadine, and it had nothing to do with the plot of the story, but they just needed me to sing another song. So I had already recorded it. Bing Crosby had recorded it years before, and it was not a big hit. But Randy Wood of Dot Records liked it, and so I recorded it, and I whistled at the beginning of it and in the middle of it. And I always look for excuses to whistle in my records anyway. I like to do that. But that record, it came out at the right time while my career was just really taking off. It was the B side of the A side, Bernadine, which Johnny Mercer, the great songwriter, had written for my film. But the Love Letters in the Sand was written by Nick Kinney, a columnist for the New York Post, writing the words in a poem. And then the melody was written by a guy named J. Fred Coots, Copz, I think. And but that song just took off, and I've never understood quite why the longevity of it. After it was no longer in the summer, but it was a summertime song, but it had more than that to it. I've had people tell me they had it sung at their weddings.
Wow.
And I say, why? It's about a love affair that didn't last. Now my broken heart aches with every wave that breaks over love letters in the sand. You broke every vow. But they loved it so much they'd have it sung at their weddings.
Maybe they weren't listening to the words. They
I
didn't
hope
pay
they're
attention close enough, or they liked the melody or something. Well, you mentioned earlier about the TV show you had, the weekly musical variety series. What was it called? The
yeah,
Pat Boone Chevy Showroom. I think you were the youngest ever to have a weekly show like that.
you
If I read
are.
that somewhere. But talk about all of the huge names that appeared on there with you that you helped launch. I mean, I could list them, but it'd be better in your voice.
Well, this was part of what I always say, that my career, I didn't seek it, I didn't make it happen. It happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
But, when my records took off and I was a sudden teen idol, even though I was married and having kids every year, but the kids didn't seem to mind that. I was singing rock and roll and I was young, their age, wearing white buck shoes. And so when that show, they came to me, ABC, and suggested I do a weekly show. And I became the youngest guy at 21, and I just barely 22 when I was hosting a nighttime middle of the week show, Chevy show, and all the top stars in the business, Perry Como, Eddie Fisher, uh, uh, Johnny Mathis, Sammy Davis, Ella Fitzgerald, on and on and on.
Nat
They
King
all
Cole, right? Andy Williams, Pearl Bailey.
well, yeah, they all came on my show, and I got to sing with all of them, and they were just treating me as an equal. And of course, that was a rush course in how to sing pop music and to get with whatever the kind of music was, to get with the program. Because I was scatting a little bit with Ella Fitzgerald, and then singing Nature Boy, his own record with Nat King Cole, but with Tony Bennett and Mel Torme and even artists who didn't sing, Gina Lollobrigida and many actresses. And here I was 22, 23 when when I graduated from Columbia, magna cum laude, and with honors. I was on the cover of TV Guide in my cap and gown. You open it up, and there's a picture, me, Shirley, and our 4 little girls. And we were both 23 years old.
Wow.
That's what was happening then. It was unbelievable, but it was just a heavy, heavy rush of activity. And as I say, too much success can be harmful. But in my case, I had a wife, 4 daughters, a family that I cared very much about. We went to church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. Even after we moved to California, I said to my wife, Shirley, we're going to live by Tennessee standards. We're not going to adopt Beverly Hills or Hollywood standards. We're going to
And you
live.
later appeared in the Beverly Hillbillies, so there you go.
Yes, I did. I sure did. Hey, you did some homework.
Yeah,
Great.
that's the job. That's the whole point of this, right? If you're talking to Pat Boone, you better get your stuff and ducks in a row before you hop on.
Well, you'll think you're interviewing. And my wife said she felt she was married to triplets. She wished 2 would go away and just she'd take one of us, but she didn't like the ones that were always infernally busy and taking on new things. Like right now, in just a very few minutes, I've got to go do my next 2 shows for Sirius XM's 50s on 5, which is on every week.
Yeah.
That channel. And now we're talking about me having my own channel on Sirius XM, because I do another show called Kaleidoscope on a internet station that's international, and it's 1 hour a week of me and all of my music, the 2,300 songs that I have recorded, and I did 3 more this last year.
Yeah.
And now, of course, Grits adding to the mix, and a whole country album.
That's your new country song, right? With Ray Stevens, the Gatlin brothers, Lori Morgan, Deborah Allen, and Roger Miller's son, Dean Miller. Now that's a lineup.
That is a lineup, and it's fun, and it's a hit. It's already, like last week, it was number 20 in downloads and 11 in streaming. And I mean, that's a whale of a lot of people tuning in, not just to hear it and hear it again, but to download it. And so that, I think and we're doing 2 videos. You have to have videos today. So we've got a animation video, and now we're going to have one. I'm going to go to Nashville next week and record, make a video, but a live video with line dancing, and hopefully with some of those same people, Ray Stevens, maybe Dean Miller. He said he felt like his dad could have written that song Grits, which is the highest compliment he could pay me. Have you heard any of it yet?
They sent me a link.
Oh yeah, Grits. bestest food there is. Country caviar, Tennessee foie gras, grits, bestest food there is. Keep your fancy food, give me my grits. That song came to me in a dream. I
Came to
dreamed
you
it.
in a dream.
Yeah, and when I came out of the dream, I had that verse, those rhymes and descriptions of what grits is, and it's country caviar and Tennessee foie gras. And somebody said, Father Gras, I bet you those are the only time those words have ever been in country songs, and it's probably true.
Probably. Wow. Grits came to he's dreaming about grits, folks.
And
Heard
yeah,
it here
and it,
first.
a big hit.
That's great. That's great. Well, I know you said you got to run. In the final seconds, do you mind telling me about writing Exodus? Because I'm a big movie guy, and I know you wrote the lyrics to the movie theme. It was Otto Preminger directing it, yeah,
Yes.
starring Paul Newman about the creation of Israel, obviously. But and Ernest Gold did the music, I guess. But
Boy,
but tell
no,
me
you're
about. Oh, I love movies. That now we're getting into my wheelhouse. But just real quick, I'd love to hear just the memories of writing that.
I want to tell you that because it is an incredible story. It was 59, I think. I think it was about 1959 or 60 when that movie was a huge hit with Paul Newman, as you said.
It was 60.
And that song, was it?
Yeah. So you're probably working on it in 59. Yeah.
And so, bum, 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 bum. Anyway, I heard that melody and I had to sing it. And we contacted the publisher. It said there won't be any words because three men who have veto power have to accept those lyrics. And professional writers were submitting lyrics, but they were trying to condense 2,000, 4,000 years of history into that short melody, a beautiful, stirring melody. But it was hard to do. And so I had to sing it. So it was a Christmas Eve. My wife was begging me to please help her get all the presents under the tree so we could go to bed. And I was listening to the Ferrani Teicher record, bum, 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 bum. And I said, honey, just one more time. I was just trying to get an idea to submit to a professional writer. I wasn't thinking of writing it myself. And as I put the needle on that 40th time, bum, 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 words came, this land is mine. And I got goosebumps because I thought, I stopped, took the needle off. That's the whole story. Forget trying to condense, millions of people and thousands of years into one little song. Make it about one person. Yeah. God gave this land to me. And I think, whoa, that's the Sabras, the women fighting along the soldiers. When I look, and I go on with, I just started playing the melody, and in 20 minutes, piece by piece by piece, as I would play bum, 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 bum. And when the morning sun reveals her hills and plains, I'd write that down. Then I see a land where children can run free. And I'm just writing it down as fast as I can. And when I finished, I turned over what I was writing on. It was the back of a Christmas card. And now that Christmas card is on the wall at Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Museum in Jerusalem. They asked for whatever I wrote the words to, because it became the second Jewish national anthem.
Wow. Not the Holocaust Museum in D.C., the one in actual
no, the one in Israel.
Wow.
It's the Holocaust Museum in Israel, in Jerusalem.
Wow.
And I've seen it there, but on the back of the Christmas card, and they said, so much the better, because they know that evangelical Christians now are their strongest supporters because we identify strongly with Israel. And I myself wear my Star of David and my Magen David and the Chai and Jewish symbols, because people know I'm a Christian, but I am an also adopted Jew. Wow. Because my Savior is a Jew.
Right.
And that's the mistake that was made by King James when they were translating the Bible, was separating it into Old and New Testaments. If it had just stayed one long thing, then you would be reading out of the law of Moses and into Jeremiah and Isaiah and Malachi and the other Old Testament, we call them, books talking about the coming Messiah, and then to go right into Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John of the Messiah coming, all of it Jews, all of it about Jews, for Jews, about little Israel, a Savior coming, a Jew from Israel.
Right. Jesus was a Jew. Yeah.
And so, I knew all of that, and I tried to bring it all into the song, but of course the main focus was on the ethnically Jewish people themselves and the promises God made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and he keeps his promises. So you can count on that. So anyway, that song then became the lyric of what is now considered the second Jewish national anthem.
Wow. I love that. I love how you view it all as one long, one continuing arc of a story, Judaism,
Yes, that's what it
Christianity.
is. It's all Jewish. If we become Christians, we become part of God's chosen people.
Right.
The Jews are His chosen people, and we follow a Jewish Messiah and are adopted into His family. Then we are, to that extent, Jews ourselves.
That's you raise a good point. And I know you also appeared as, didn't you play an angel at the tomb in The Greatest Story Ever Told, George Stevens?
You know these things, really.
Well, I just interviewed George Stevens Jr. last week. I have his autobiography right there, talking about his dad and working on all that. So Sidney Poitier helping Jesus carry the cross, all that stuff. So, but that's cool that you were an angel at the tomb. That's
played that. I got to say, now this sounds presumptuous of me, but I'm only talking spiritually now and biblically. The words that were spoken in over the manger, the angels singing, joy to the world, the Lord has come, and they were prophesying, they were speaking the language that a Savior has been born in Israel, in Bethlehem. Well, those words were important, but if the angel in the tomb couldn't have spoken what he spoke, it would all be meaningless. But I got to say those words, why do you seek the living among the dead? He is not here. He has risen, just as he said. And one of the Gospels says, you'll find him by the Sea of Galilee, where he told you to meet him. And so that, for me to get chosen, now, of course, I talked to George Stevens when we were getting ready to do the scene, and I said, Mr. Stevens, I've studied acting a good bit, and I understand the method version of getting under the skin of who you're playing. But how do you get under the skin of an angel? And he said, don't worry about it. One of the scriptures says, a young man in white raiment. You just be, yes, you're angelic, but to appearances, you'll look like a young man in white raiment, and just have a little edge in your voice, like, why do you seek the living among the dead? He's not here. I mean, I didn't say it quite that much condemning, but he is risen, just as he said. But I spoke it very emphatically. However, when I and my family were in the premiere and the Cinerama Dome out here in California, lights came up. They said, where were you? Where were you in the film? I was the angel at the tomb, but George Stevens had me in a robe with a hoodie, and about diagonally across my face was a shadow, and so really I could not have told that it was me.
Right.
But I was glad. I didn't want people to say, "Oh, look, there's Pat Boone." No.
Right.
I was glad to be the one to be chosen, and if you know it's me, then you'll recognize me. But if not, all you know is an angel appeared, and you hear those words. That's the important part, not who's playing them. John Wayne, I thought, was an intrusion.
He's the centurion, right? Surely he's the Son of God.
Yeah,
but you can tell it's John Wayne.
He said, "Surely, Pilgrim, this was the Son of God." And you could tell it was John Wayne.
Right. You're like waiting for him to say, that'll be the day he rises.
It's out of it.
Right. Exactly. No, I'm kind of with you. It's kind of cool that you're ambiguous. Kind of like in Ben-Hur, you don't even see Christ's face. I think that's a little more, nothing against Max von Sydow and George Stevens' vision and all of that. But I kind of like a little bit more of the mystery, because it's, if it's something otherworldly, let's keep it a little.
I never could accept Max von Sydow, as good an actor as he is, great as he played the role. But Jesus was dark-skinned, right, Jewish, and that was considered Africa, where he was, and was later on for centuries considered Africa.
I agree with you. Jesus was a person of color historically.
He wasn't Scandinavian,
right, with blue eyes like Max von Sydow. Rest in peace, Max von Sydow. Exorcist is a legendary, and Seventh Seal, all the rest. Great stuff. But
I really enjoyed this, because you know me as well as I know myself. Thank you.
Well, you said what? Your wife said you were triplets. So, I mean, to interview three of you, I had to bring my
I'm the more loquacious one. I can't quit talking. but I have to now because I've got to go do the 50s on 5 or 50s gold stuff at Sirius
Go
in
for
their
it.
studios.
Well, everyone check out those shows and check out the new song Grits and yeah, congrats. You can tell you're a man of faith, Gospel Music Hall of Fame. All of that's coming out in your voice.
You just gave me a memorable quote. You say congrats, I say congrits, because congrits is with grits. So congrits, thank you.
Congratulations. Hey, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time. I wanted to take a second to tell you about an app I really enjoy. Living in the DC area is great, and Podcast DC gathers all of the local shows that I like all in one local app. Health, sports, local news, politics, and so much more. Podcast DC is the new local app with hundreds of DC area podcasts to choose from. I can earn exciting rewards just for listening and share the podcasts I love instantly. Available in the App Store or in Google Play, listen local with Podcast DC.